Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Professor Ming's Strategic Insights. As we all know that recently the competition between the United States and Communist China has been increasingly intense. Normally, we pay more attention to competitions in areas like military and diplomacy. In fact, the competition in the high-tech area is even much more intense. Mainland China's basic research is relatively weak compared to that of the United States. So what they can do is to imitate, to copy, or even to steal from the United States. One of the common practices is to infiltrate the United States academic circle, like a research lab, research team, or that of a high-tech company. Today, we're going to concentrate on the question of how they infiltrate the United States academic community. The most common way for Beijing to do this is to provide a substantial amount of money to establish some kind of cooperative projects, such as a joint program, research projects, research teams, or research labs, and so on and so forth, in targeting at areas like AI, computer science, biological and medical science, engineering, or even material science, and so on and so forth. The problem with this kind of practice is that usually they're covert. They're hidden. They do not want the public or even the U.S. government to know about this. So they ask the recipient, either the lab or the individuals, to hide information from the government. And then that leads to the leak of the relevant either technology or scientific secrets. Furthermore, some of the money are coming from Chinese military or state-owned enterprises. Anyway, the party is behind all that. So the results of the research are usually transferred to China, and usually it could be dual use. Namely, it could be used for a civilian purpose or even for military purpose. And that's the most common practice. The most widely known project is the so-called 1,000 Talent Program or 1,000 Talent Project. It's established by the Chinese government in order to attract foreign scholars with high pay, funding for a research lab, for research team, or some kind of research project. Anyway, sometimes they're accompanied by some titles, such as Yangtze River Scholars or Yellow River Scholars and things like that. I have access to several lists. Actually, the names on the list are in the hundreds. They're from the United States, the UK, Germany, France, and even Israel. So it's all over the world. The problem with this kind of practice is that all these scholars are attracted to the so-called 1,000 Talent Program. They hold a full-time job in their own country or in their own universities, be them the United States, Japan, or Germany, or the UK, and so on and so forth. But they have a full-time pay, sometimes with a summer job in China, in mainland China. Not only they got a full-time pay, the pay usually is very high, very, very high. Couple of times of what you get in your own country or in your own university, in the United States or in Japan or in Germany. Sometimes they offer tax-free allowances and even substantial living expenses to cover your stay in China. And in some cases, they build a complete lab or research team for you in China. Actually, it's a copy of what you do in your own country or in your own university in the United States. Of course, all the research results belong to them. And in the end, all the research results belong to China. And they can utilize that for even business, commercial, or even for military purposes. The most notable case is Professor Charles Liebert, who was a department head of the chemistry department of Harvard University. He was eventually convicted for concealing from the United States government. He was receiving a salary of up to $50,000 per month, as well as substantial living expenses from Wuhan University of Technology. And the second way of doing this is the notorious Confucius Institutes. It was widely established in many universities in the United States. On the surface, it's an institution for teaching Chinese language and for cultural exchanges, but in fact, it's an institution for propaganda for Beijing. It was echoing what Beijing says in some important questions or important cases at the time. And it's also an organization or institution for infiltration into United States academic circle. In the courses or in the curricula offered in the so-called Confucius Institutes, some of the so-called sensitive targets or the sensitive topics are concealed or dismissed from their curricula, such as Tiananmen Massacre, Tibet, Taiwan, Uyghur, Hong Kong, Falun Gong, and organ harvesting. So all these are dismissed or denied. And the professors or the teachers, instructors are often assigned or dispatched by Beijing or by the Chinese government. So it deeply infiltrates into United States academic circle. As of now, some of these Confucius Institutes are closed, but some are still operative under a different name. So that's something we must pay attention to. So as you can imagine, what comes up with it is usually a more strict and more frequent self-censorship on the part of the American universities and on American professors. But Beijing's efforts to infiltrate the United States academic circle doesn't stop there. They go down as far as to K-12, meaning to the levels of high schools and elementary schools. But this is a much more complicated question, so we don't have time for that. Perhaps we'll elaborate on that sometime in the future. They do things like Confucius Classroom and funding to the principals or for the board of directors and things like that. But anyway, we're going to talk about that later. And the last thing they do is to collect information through channels like RA, what we call research assistants in important labs or in important labs in important universities in some projects, or by way of getting access to what we call a peer review. Sometimes we publish our research results in the academic journals, but by way of peer review, they can have access to unpublished research results so that they can transfer that back to China and get a head start there. Like I said, this is a very big and very complicated question. So what we covered today is but a tip of an iceberg. But we can conclude with several observations. The first is the leak, the very serious leak. The leak of research results, research secrets, or commercial secrets, or even policy directions. So serious leaks in many aspects. The second problem is brainwashing. It affects people, how people think for those who are in critical positions, in critical research, and things like that. The third one is, of course, espionage. Although cases in this area is limited, but still there are some substantial cases which we're going to talk about in future time. The fourth one is self-censorship or self-imposed restrictions on the part of either American universities or American professors. So eventually it hurts our democracy, our democratic system, and our way of life. And that's something that we have to be very watchful. So like I said, this is a big question, so we're going to elaborate on that in future times. And this is one I want to share with you today. I hope you like it, and please share it with your friends if you haven't done so. And please subscribe to our program, and please do remember to click the icon bell. I'll see you next time.